I walked out of my engagement party because my fiancé didn't stand up for me. I used to think that love meant compromise, that if you just cared hard enough, if you were patient enough, if you gave a little more, eventually it would all balance out. I believed that about David. I believed it right up until the moment I stood in a room full of clinking glasses and pastel-colored decor, with the faint echo of laughter in my ears, and realized I had no place there. It all began with a dress. Not just any dress, the dress. A midnight blue, floor-length gown with a low back and subtle beading that shimmered like starlight. I'd picked it months ago, on a day when I still felt excited about the engagement, before everything started feeling like a performance. My future mother-in-law, Mary Ann, had hated it from the moment she saw a photo. "Too flashy," she said. "It doesn't scream bride." But I wasn't the bride yet. This was the engagement party, and I wanted to feel like myself. David had laughed it off when she first complained. "She'll get over it," he'd said. Spoiler, she didn't. The day of the party arrived, a golden June afternoon, hosted at David's family's country club. I walked in on Mary Ann arguing with the caterers, snapping her fingers at a poor girl holding a tray of champagne. When she turned and saw me in the dress, her eyes narrowed. "Well," she said flatly, "I suppose that's one way to announce yourself." I looked to David, standing right beside her. He didn't say a word. That was the first flicker. A silent alarm was going off in my gut. But I smiled, nodded politely, and walked into the room. The party was beautiful, I'll give them that. Strings of white roses curled around the wrought iron railings, and a string quartet played softly in the background. Everything looked perfect. Everyone looked perfect. Everyone except me, apparently. Over the next hour, I overheard murmurs. A cousin whispering, "Bold choice, huh?" An aunt saying, "Mary Ann's right. She's too much." I tried to laugh it off. I tried to cling to David, but he kept getting swept into conversations with old friends, laughing a little too hard, sipping champagne while I stood alone. Then came the speech. Mary Ann clinked her glass, the room quieted, and she began. "We're so thrilled to welcome Emily into the family," she said, smiling at me with the warmth of a statue. Though I must admit, when I first met her, I wasn't quite sure. You know how it is, she's spirited. There were chuckles. I forced a smile. But David has always had a big heart. He's patient, understanding, and he sees past appearances. Another chuckle. This time, my heart sank. I looked at David, right beside her, smiling, laughing. He didn't stop her. He didn't even flinch. Afterward, I pulled him aside, away from the crowd and the champagne and the facade. "Did you hear what she said?" I asked, voice low. "She was just trying to be funny," he said, brushing it off. "Funny? She called me a project, something to see past, and you laughed." His eyes darted around, like he wanted to be anywhere but there. This isn't the time." She was joking. "Let it go. Let it go." I'd let it go when she criticized the way I decorated our apartment. I'd let it go when she told me I was too opinionated at dinner. I'd let it go when she suggested David deserved someone a little more polished. And every time, I waited for David to say something, to stand up for me. And every time, he didn't. I realized in that moment that the man I was marrying could hold my hand in private, but not my back in public. That I was about to walk into a family where I'd always be the outsider, always the one who had to let it go. So I didn't. I walked out. I left the clinking glasses, the pastel decor, the murmurs and raised eyebrows. I left Mary Ann's smirk and David's silence. I walked out of my engagement party in my starry blue gown, heels clicking against marble like punctuation marks. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't make a scene. I just chose myself. A week later, I mailed the ring back. David called once. I didn't answer. There wasn't anything left to say. And somewhere, deep inside, I felt a new kind of peace. Not because it was easy, but because, for the first time in a long time, I stood up for me. 6 months passed. I moved into a small but bright apartment on the edge of the city. It smelled like old wood and lemon cleaner, and I loved it more than the townhouse David and I had shared. It was mine. The furniture didn't match. I used mismatched mugs and left laundry on the chair in the corner. There were no passive-aggressive comments about clutter, no stiff family dinners, no Mary Ann. For the first few months, I lived quietly. I started journaling, went to therapy, took long walks after work, sometimes circling the same block just to feel the rhythm of my feet under me. I ran into people who asked about the wedding, and I learned to say it's off with grace. I hadn't spoken to David since the day I mailed the ring back. He'd called once, sent a message that said I don't understand, but okay. That was it. 6 years of history and a nearly planned wedding, dissolved in a sentence. I thought I was done with him. Until he showed up at my door. It was a rainy Thursday evening, the kind of night where the world feels wrapped in gray felt. I was in sweatpants, halfway through a lukewarm pad thai, when there was a knock. I opened it, and there he was. David. He looked tired, not in the way you look after a long day, tired like he hadn't slept in months. His jacket was soaked. He was holding something in his hand, an envelope, damp around the edges. I didn't come to fight, he said quietly. I just needed to see you. I didn't say anything. I should have closed the door, but I didn't. Can I come in? I hesitated. Then I nodded. He stepped inside like he was walking through a dream. I watched him look around, at the cluttered bookshelves, the candle burning on the table, the tiny cactus on the windowsill. This place feels like you, he said. I crossed my arms. Why are you here, David? He looked down at the envelope. I've been carrying this around for 2 weeks. It's a letter, not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I get it now. What I didn't do. What I let happen. Silence. I let her bully you. And I stood there because it was easier than making her uncomfortable. Because I thought that if I didn't pick sides, I wasn't doing anything wrong. But I was. I was letting her tell you who you were. And I was telling you I agreed by staying quiet. My throat tightened. I didn't know what I'd expected. An excuse? A plea? I've been working on myself, he added. Therapy. A lot of journaling. Like, embarrassingly a lot. I'm not here to win you back. I swear. I just wanted you to know. You weren't crazy. Or overreacting. You were brave. I wasn't. I took the envelope from his hand. I didn't open it. He looked like he might say more, but then he just nodded, turned, and walked out. I stood there in the doorway, the letter in my hand, the smell of rain rising from his footprints. I didn't know how to feel. Closure? Relief? Grief for the version of us that could have been? Eventually, I opened the envelope. It was handwritten. Not perfect. Some parts crossed out, others smudged. But it was real. He owned everything. The silence. The complicity. The fear. And then he said something I'll never forget. You walked out to protect your heart. And I admire you more for that than anything else you ever did when we were together. You taught me something I didn't even know I needed to learn. I put the letter in a drawer, not because I wanted to forget, but because I wanted to remember who I was when I left, and who I was becoming now. I didn't call him. I didn't need to. This wasn't the beginning of a new love story. It was the end of an old one. And sometimes, endings are the most powerful thing we can give ourselves.